Yeah, thank you for joining me. Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Martin, for having me. My name is Diab Abu Jaja, and I'm the director of the Hind Rajab Foundation. Um, the foundation, as you know, is a young organization that started almost a year ago, aiming at seeking justice for the victims of the genocide in Gaza, and also beyond that for Palestinian victims, and in practice also ending the impunity of Israeli perpetrators. So we have been filing cases in several countries. Not only against prominent Israeli leadership, the responsibles of actually the political decision making, but also against rank and file soldiers and officers of the Israeli army. Um, Basically, with the exception of traveling soldiers, mostly we try to go after dual nationals in national courts. Sometimes we worked, of course, with the ICC frame. We still do, but our strategy focuses mainly on going to national justice and trying to, ask the countries who are, who have citizens taking part in the genocide in Gaza to hold these citizens to account.
I'm sure you know this, but one of the things that I have found most interesting about the foundation, at least in the public discussion, is that at a time in which there was a complete sense of despondency, that nothing could be done, that we were just sort of sitting around looking at this catastrophe unfold, people really started to pay attention to what I think was a sense that indeed something could be done, that there was a possibility of, taking this into one's hand. Um, I wonder how did this idea come about? I mean, how exactly is that you guys suddenly began to think, okay, there is a way to do this?
Mhm. Yeah, it is indeed some kind of, I mean, it's paradoxal a bit in the sense that on the one hand, in the face of that impunity that is manifesting itself in Gaza, one tend to think that not much can be done indeed, and that Israel is above the law and Israeli soldiers are untouchable. And I think their behavior of posting war crimes online through social media and other channels have been illustrating this sense that is not present only at the end of the people who want to show solidarity with the Palestinians, but also within the ranks of the Israeli army and Israeli society as a whole. So, I mean, we all tend sometimes to feel this helplessness and sometimes even become cynical, especially when we are talking about international law or law in general, because this is where this hypocrisy is manifesting itself, the most by the fact that legal frameworks that have been established to prevent a genocide, to prevent war crimes, uh, are redundant or are actually useless when it is Israel committing these war crimes, or for that matter, for example, the United States also. But I mean, let's talk about this particular case. So while they have been these same frameworks have been immediately activated, for example, in the case of Ukraine, and in other cases. So our way of looking at this was at that time, this cannot, you know, continue. This must be challenged, and to break out of that cynicism, I think the idea that we had is, to start thinking from the perspective of the people in charge, whether of international institutes or even politicians in the West, and to think, look, I mean, if you are going to hold friends, I mean, let's start by the other side. If you are going to hold enemies of the dominant country or the dominant, empire, if you want, if you're going to hold the enemies to account, that's quite easy. You're swimming with the current, right? Because of course, the dominant country in the world, which is the United States of America and its allies and its interests, will help you. They will give you, a push in the back, right? If you're going to hold their friends into account, that is a different kind of ballgame. You're going to be, prevented. You are swimming against the current. So, but we have no choice. We have to swim against the current because this is how things are. And it will go slow, and it will be difficult and dangerous when you do that, but it can be done. I mean, at least we need to try. We have no choice because the other alternative is to drown altogether if you don't swim at all. Because this is we're witnessing the normalization of genocide. And the normalization of genocide for us as a species, regardless of any identity, is something that we cannot accept. And this is exactly why, after the Second World War, at least on the level of narrative, we have been told that never again means that we have to set a bunch of rules and structures to prevent that we cannot just say never again as a moral compass. It needs to be institutionalized. So if this is now eroded in Gaza, that's eroded for all of us. So in that sense, we started trying, and actually, you could see with let's take the ICC an example, and I don't want to talk about our cases. Let's take the ICC that has been fed by so many organizations, including ourselves, with a lot of evidence regarding what happened in Gaza. It took so much time for the ICC to move with that, to do something with it, but eventually it did. And it took so much time because it is actually swimming against the current, and then it's indeed slow. That's normal. So, but eventually it did issue arrest warrants for Netanyahu and for Gallant, and that was a marking point, and I think even much more important than what we are doing, because that is a level that no state that abides by the rule of law can ignore, at least on the level of, you know, perception, right? So most European countries, including Germany, which is like an ally of Israel and accommodating the narrative that Israel is defending itself and etc. But even Germany cannot just, disregard the decision of the ICC. So, so yes, international law can be saved. This is my conviction. But it will take time and it will take a lot of patience. So now what we're doing is it should be an easier battle, which is because it's not about international law, it's about national law. Because if international law is, and this is the
Sorry,
idea
can you
behind all of it.
explain? I mean, you already said it is at the national level, but can you explain precisely that? Why is it now about national law?
Yes, yes. I mean, so like, I mean, and the question you asked was, what was the idea behind it? And actually, this is the idea behind it. The idea behind it is if international law is prone to be influenced by, the powers that be and the hegemony of current international power, right? Uh, and that makes it very difficult to deploy where it should be deployed, right? Um, National law is a different kind of thing. If international law is then just operating in favor of the allies of the United States and not against them, national law, countries tend to take their own law seriously, especially countries that call themselves liberal democracies, right? So one of the core ideas that is a foundational idea for these countries is the separation of powers, right? Is that we are rules-based societies. Now, we all agree that the international system is not a rules-based order. It is a power-based order. But we do not all agree that the national level is not a rules-based order. I mean, whether we are left or right, I think across the spectrum of the center left and center right to the fringe of the far right and the fringe of the far left, there's some kind of consensus, at least a hope in the most cynical sense, but mostly a consensus that we are living in rather a rules-based order. You can criticize the rules, you don't like the rules, you think they should be changed, but there are rules, right? So these rules do not allow the citizens of these countries to commit war crimes, right? And since the genocide in Gaza is a multinational genocide, it is committed basically by a multinational force. The Israeli army is probably the most international army out there. The level of foreigners, I mean, foreigners like dual nationals, let's say, who are fighting with the Israeli army is very significant. So in that sense, taking these people who are Belgian and Germans and English and Dutch and etc. And Chileans and Argentinians, taking these people to account in their own countries is a different kind of mechanism than going to international law. It doesn't involve universal jurisdiction. It involves the jurisdiction of a state on its own, citizens, and that is something that is less contested than the universal jurisdiction that normally is included in the Geneva Convention. So this is basically for us a battleground that is more conducive to justice than international justice. So I still believe that the warrants of the ICC are much more important than what we do. And because we all are, as a species, we are all hoping for the emergence of a certain legal subject above nations and all that to protect the weak against the strong, right? So this is the hope. So it's more important. But when it comes to immediate justice, when it comes to getting justice within the coming years, within the coming 5 years, 10 years, national justice is going to be much more important than international justice. We're going to see, yes.
I
So
mean, I I do see a secondary effect of the Hind Rajab Foundation's work, and I wonder if you can talk to it. So obviously, one wants sentences and one wants prosecution, but I think just the mere presence of the things, the announcement of the things being in the water, has really put a very serious dumping effect on the boasting and the sense of absolute impunity that a lot of the people of the IDF seems to have had. So it already seemed to have had a very positive effect in terms of how is that, the response is perceived, even without necessarily getting into courts.
I agree. Yes, I think this is indeed a secondary effect. When we started doing this, you know, uh, one of the things we wanted to break was that sense of impunity, that sense of we can do whatever we want, but there's no consequences. There are no consequences, So at least we want to say, no, look, we will sue you, even though we are not very much hopeful on the outcome, but we will take it to court. We will tell the people what you've done, right? But soon after when we started seeing the reaction on what we're doing, we realized, oh, we're onto something on a deeper level, on the level of litigation itself, on the level of legal. But it is true that, together with our, let's say, maturing of our legal strategy, that started kind of scattered and started taking shape with the months, um, and led to the foundation of the Hind Rajab Foundation, because we were doing the first case under the name March 30 movement, and that was early 2023. So by, let's say, mid of 2024, our strategy had matured into, we knew exactly what we need to do on different levels. So then we created the Hind Rajab Foundation to be the vehicle of this more mature strategy. And we were also aware that, accountability is also, it's also awareness. It's also it's a psychological thing also, not purely a legal thing. It's something related to society, how it conceives things. And I think, many Israeli war criminals now know that, somebody's watching. They know that somebody's documenting, that somebody's analyzing, and that one day these things, I mean, in the back of their mind, they know that one day these things that they committed are going to come back and haunt them. So that boasting from the beginning, that, feeling I'm above the law, kind of dissipated. Even the Israeli army changed sets of rules, systematically demanding the soldiers not to post anymore on social media, but also starting to hide the faces of low
Basis.
rank officers systematically. So you now have these, even silly situations, absurd situations where you have, soldiers posing for graduation pictures with their backs to the camera, which is something that they never had before. And if you read this on a, psychological level, on an ideological level, even, you see clearly, a retreat of the sense of, dominance and supremacy and impunity. So it's retreating. And I think this is important, and I think it's important also because it kind of, humanizes all sides in this equation. Because when you are the absolute victim, you're not human; you're just a figure. And humanizing the victims is also to give them a face. It's also to tell, look, this victim is called Hind. It's a child. And look, Hind was at the kindergarten and she was graduated and she liked to do this. Or that other victim is called Mahmoud and he was 18 years old and he wanted to be a doctor, etc. That's humanizing the victims. But at the same time, humanizing the perpetrator is also putting a face to the perpetrator. It's not the Jews. It's not even the Zionists, even though it is the Zionists somehow. But I mean, you know what I want to say. It
But it's
is
an
it
individual
is this
name. It's
guy.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this guy and he did this, and it's that guy who did this. So and the fact that they're afraid now from showing their faces and they pay attention, they complain. Some of them, when they run away after a case, they go to Israel and they complain and they say, "Oh, they ruined my. I was traumatized." Like Yuval Vagdani, who was in Brazil, when he came back, he gave an interview, say how traumatizing the experience was for him and everything, and that he did not do anything. He just blew up homes. He did not kill people, like as if blowing. He doesn't realize that blowing up homes
Homes is
is actually a
destroying
war crime,
lives.
right? Yeah, yeah, he doesn't realize. But anyway, that's humanizing. All of a sudden, they're crying, they're complaining. They are individuals, they have names. So I think it is a humanizing thing for all parties involved.
Let me ask you. I mean, you had a couple of run-ins with ministerial figures in Israel, famously with the foreign minister, I believe, um, about 6 months ago. Can you tell me a bit about that story?
Oh yeah, the it's the threats that it's not in the foreign
And
minister.
sorry,
It
just
was the
just 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 to complete the thought. I mean, very much in the sense that quite clearly you were having an impact.
right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is something that also made us understand that we are hitting a nerve. And I mean, it started after a case in Cyprus, the Livman case, when they smuggled a soldier out of Cyprus. It was then clear to us that, oh, they are smuggling a soldier. That's like something. And then they founded a commission. That commission was, a combination of different entities, like the Ministries of Justice, the Ministry of Defense, but also the Shabak and the Mossad and the Ministry of struggle against anti-Semitism and diaspora, which is then the minister of that ministry is Amichai Shikli,
Basically.
and who's the guy actually who threatened me after the Vagdani case in Brazil, because that was another case where they had to smuggle somebody of a country. They smuggled Vagdani from Brazil to Argentina, and then we filed a case against him again in Argentina. So they smuggled him from Argentina to Miami and then back to Israel. And then after that, Shikli, was really clearly irritated, and as irritated, like that he was driven to troll me under one of my tweets, right? And he was trolling basically, putting a picture of me, with a gun, taken totally out of any context. And then when I said, look, you no need to get angry, that was my reaction. Saying, no need to get angry. All you need to do is get good lawyers, right? Just no need to do that. And then his answer was, oh no, you know what? You need to watch your pager. So that
Oh,
is
it's an
clear
actual
threat.
threat, a threat of violence.
Yes, yes, because he's answering me, telling him to get a lawyer, right? And he's saying, "Oh no, I'm not gonna get a lawyer. You gotta watch your pager." So he's calling me a terrorist from his perspective, of course, and he's threatening with violence because he's making a reference to the pager attack in Beirut, right? And since I'm Lebanese, that matches their narrative. So what happened after that was also another I think, milestone in our legal strategy because then I personally sued Amichai Shikli in Belgium for threats. And Amichai Shikli was programmed to come and speak in Brussels, I think a few days later of that, 10 days after I sued him. And when the Israeli side contacted the Belgian side to inquire about the possibilities of arrest, whether if he comes to Belgium, the answer of the Belgians was yes, there is a possibility of arrest. They asked about immunity. The answer was no, you do not enjoy immunity. So that was again a moment. I mean, the guy wanted to threaten, but at the end of the day, he made things worse. And it, things are shifting in a way that the Israelis are, who are in a way drunk with a military victory, the way they perceive it. They feel they are above any foe they are confronted with in terms of, in Palestine or in Lebanon or elsewhere. At the same time, there is another awareness that is, I think, finding its way through to them, and that is of the fact that they have never been as isolated as now in terms of the public opinion, and that they have never been as exposed as they are now for committing war crimes, which has been the credo and the modus operandi of Israel for 77 years in Palestine. But this is the first time that they feel like, oh, there's a pushback internationally, and we are starting to worry about it. So I think this is a very important turning point because I think this is going to be the field of justice, but also it will define. And I'm not saying only what we're doing. We're just part of that, right? I'm saying not even only the legal aspect of this, but also the political, the cultural, the whole shift that is going on now is going to redefine the future of historic Palestine, including Israel.
I think that there was a lot of sense of there was a very sense of very deep sense of hopelessness among the public I deal with, at least. And I think that as the stories from the Hind Rajab Foundation started to come out, and we'll get to Hind Rajab herself in a second, um, the reactions were really quite extraordinary, because I think that I mean I could really sense that there was an expression of hope. Okay, there is. I'm not talking about for people that are in the middle of the conversation, but I'm talking about the people that were kind of looking from the sidelines, thinking this is really destroying my psychology, and I cannot believe that I cannot turn to my government, I cannot turn to my representatives. There is nobody. And then all of a sudden, Hind Rajab Foundation came out of nowhere and then put a lot of the Israeli machine, including the soldiers, on the back foot. I think that the impact, I mean, it's one that, in my mind at least, really goes beyond that, the very specific questions of lawsuits and so on. Uh, so, from myself, in any case, I'm quite grateful. Um, I wanted to ask you about um, I wanted to ask you about Hind Rajab herself. So when did you find out, and how? I mean, I assume that there is a reason why it carries her name, the foundation. For me, it was really, even though the months before had been brutal, that really was a turning point. So I wonder how it hit you, and what is that you saw there that.
Mhm. Yes, I think what you describe as a turning point, on the psychological level, I think that was the case also for many people, including myself. And we have been, when Hind was murdered in January 2024, uh, we were already doing cases and filing cases under the name of March 30 movement for almost a year, a bit more than a year actually. And so that wasn't the reason why we started filing cases, right? We were filing cases, but we were already in a conversation within the organization back then of, okay, we need to focus on this. We need to just do this. Has to be everything what we do because we are having an effect. And I think we realized soon, I mean, very soon that our strength is in research and the ability of, like reading into the scene and gathering all these elements about the Israeli soldiers, Israeli perpetrators. And when Hind, when the voice of Hind reached everyone, because as you recall, Martin, I mean, everyone was following this live. Hind was stuck in the car.
Very much
It
so.
was all over. Yeah, it was all
Very,
over
very much so.
X. Before she died, within the
Even
first
even
few
I will
hours,
say, even those of us who cannot speak Arabic, were listening to her voice hour after hour. I mean, really.
yes, yes. So this is something that unfolded in real time. And it was captivating for all of us, and traumatic in a way, because especially if you're father or mother. You
Oh, sorry,
know,
that's the voice of your child calling in the middle of the night.
exactly. Yeah. And that girl was stuck there. And it was like, for God's sake, just go get her. I don't know, ask Netanyahu to go get her. Ask, we don't care about politics. We don't care about who's responsible for this or not. We don't care. Just get that kid, right? So there was a level, and then what happened afterwards goes beyond, even the worst nightmare. What happened? Not only that Hind wasn't saved. I mean, I honestly could not believe. I was convinced in the beginning, oh, they're gonna definitely now go get her. And I was saying like, oh yeah, and the Israelis now knowing how they operate, they're gonna make a propaganda moment of it. They're gonna go save her and make picture and take her to a hospital in Israel. And I was hoping they do that, right? Because I don't give a damn if they use this as propaganda, but like save that
Save
kid,
the
right?
child.
Yeah, but what happened went beyond any comprehension of
It
mine.
really was.
Even in my most pessimistic scenario about the nature of this genocidal machine, is that actually not only they did not save her, they finished her. And not only they finished her, they finished the people who were
That
going to
were there
save
to
her.
save.
Yeah, the medics who were they bombed the ambulance and killed them. And so that was for me like, what is going on here? And that was to me also. I mean, it has a lot of layers of messages. If you analyze it, it reflects how these soldiers looked at Palestinian life. It reflects how they looked at life to court, actually, and it reflects also the level of impunity. Like, oh, we don't care what you see, we don't care what you think. We're gonna do anyway what we feel like doing,
I think
and that is killing.
it was probably quite clear to the Israelis themselves that at that point the name Hind Rajab was known. So they were attacking somebody that was already kind of understood to be like somebody with a name and an identity and a child, like in front of a lot of the public around the world.
And they still did it. And to me, the fact that they still did it reflects on the intention of it, in a way. So that was like, you know, I don't speak often in language of good and evil because I'm a bit, I have maybe an existentialist side, right? So I'm kind of like, okay, what is good, what is evil, right? Because we're all stuck in this realm that we are struggling to understand, including these soldiers, right? But that was for me like an act of pure evil, right? And that kind of, galvanized us even more, I remember. And then we were talking about creating that new institute. And to me, like that institute needed to be the Hind Rajab Foundation because Hind could not die, she could not be forgotten. What happened there could not be forgotten. For me, that like Hind had to haunt them back and to follow them everywhere. So that was a bit, the feeling and the sense of this. And this is what's happening now. I mean, I think they're not now when they say like it's funny, but if you read it on some kind of transcendental level, it maybe makes sense because sometimes sometimes every day I read Israeli media. And when they talk about us, sometimes they say Hind Rajab Foundation, but sometimes they say Hind Rajab. Hind Rajab is pursuing a soldier. Hind Rajab filed the case against. Hind Rajab is, like, and that is accurate in a way, and on some level. And so yeah, it's a responsibility to carry that name, and it makes the mission. And you spoke about the expectations also, Martin, of a lot of people, and definitely appreciate that and humbled by it. And I know that we are who we are as an organization today, also thanks to these people, because what happened is when people saw in us a glimpse of hope, they came and they supported us massively. They
You know what
supported us
what I
by
find
becoming volunteers. Yeah.
what I find really remarkable about the period in which we live, I mean, about the Gaza, what Gaza has given us. When I look at you guys, when I look about the Sumut flotilla, when I look at the Madlin, really, it's seeing essentially civil society in its various forms doing the work that we have expected all these years our governments and our institutions to do. I mean, we're crowdfunding state functions from, humanitarian aid all the way to justice, which also goes to show,
Yes.
I mean, the collapse of our institutions and the collapse of our democratic systems. Um,
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I think it shows the collapse, but it carries also some hope in the agency of the peoples. And I think, you know, what is emerging now is maybe something that can redefine the international justice system and the justice system, but also beyond the justice system, how we look at ourselves as citizens and as people in general. And it must redefine because it's a it's an important moment. It's a threshold. And just like the Second World War was. So after the Holocaust, it was clear that well, things could not continue like they are. I mean, like this abomination happened, and something has to be done. Something has
With
to
the
be changed,
framework.
right? Yeah, and and now again, we are at the moment because what happened in Gaza, uh, is so shocking because of how people looked at it. And I'm not talking about the people who were in solidarity, which is luckily the numbers are growing every day and everywhere, right? But I'm talking about the institutional order, how it looks at this. As okay, it's like justified. Is it really a genocide? Is it really war crimes? Is it really this? And this is a big difference. Many people always ask, like, yeah, why Gaza and not Sudan? Why Gaza and not, I don't know, the Uyghurs or whatever? And the answer is always look, because regardless of analyzing case per case and the facts and what's true, what's not true, but let's assume everything you say on everything is true, right? Gaza, there's no consensus in Gaza among the states and the governments of this world who call themselves justice loving and democracies and freedom, inducing systems and liberal democracies. There's no consensus on condemning the killer and the murderer in Gaza. Well, you will see nobody applauding the killers in Sudan, nobody applauding oppressions everywhere else, or nobody in the
Actually,
West
very,
at
very
least.
good point. Nobody,
Yeah.
nobody's really clapping for the RSF, right?
Yeah, no, and nobody was clapping for Milosevic in the West, right? Nobody was
Right.
clapping. I mean, nobody in terms of the establishment. So you were always on the moral high ground in every single conflict. But when it comes to Palestine, systematically for 77 years, but now more than ever, because it's clear more than ever,
Let me
you are not on that moral high ground.
let me ask you one last question. We have very few minutes left. The shooter of Hind Rajab, and as well as a person that or gave the command, you guys have identified. And of course, for many of the people that will be seeing this, who come from Latin America, uh, the sudden realization that an Argentinian, Jewish, but Argentine double citizenship was standing at the almost center of the brutality. In fact, carried the brutality himself came as a complete shock. How far? I mean, you mentioned this already. This was a multinational. It's a multinational genocidal project. How far does it really go?
Yeah, it is shocking indeed how far it goes because I don't want to go into quantification of the number of multinationals or dual nationals because I mean if we talk in terms of American citizens, we're talking more than 20,000 American citizens involved, right? So if you talk of French citizens, you're around 4,000 involved, French citizens. And I mean you have even thousands of Turkish citizens involved. Most of them live in Israel, but they still carry Turkish nationality. So it's really a broad endeavor. It's like something that we are. And when I say we are observing and we are documenting, I'm not talking about every Israeli soldier. Let me be clear about that. Regardless of ideological analysis of what colonialism and settler colonialism is, we are going by the letter of the law. We are just going after people who themselves individually committed war crimes and that we can prove that we documented the evidence of it, right? So I'm talking about, like we have people from China who were serving in the Israeli army, from India. It's incredible. I never know how international it is. And indeed, a lot of people from Latin America, not people from Argentina. One of them is Itai Chukurkop, who's like part of the Vampire Empire company that is responsible for the killing of Hind Rajab. Now, to be clear, we don't know if Itai Chukurkov himself pulled the trigger, right? But he was there. He was part of the tanks that killed Hind Rajab, right? Who's clearly the responsible is in the chain of command Sean Glass, who is the commander of the company that killed Hind. But Itai Chukurkov is one of these soldiers who were there, part of the Vampire Empire Company, part of the 52nd Battalion, Armored Battalion of the 401st Brigade, and they've done so many atrocities in Gaza. They are the champions of atrocities when it comes to armored units, not just the killing of Hind, but also the attack on Al Shifa Hospital, several other massacres. So it is terrible. And now Itai Chukurkov, last time we checked, was in Buenos Aires, visiting his grandma and sending nice pictures from the tea table. And we filed a case against him in Argentina, of course, and we're waiting. We're seeing if there's at least an investigation into that. We think that the least Argentinian authorities could do is to ask this guy, look, what did you do there? Just to sit with him and ask him questions, interrogate him about his participation, about what he's done. If there is still rule of law in Argentina, and I believe there must be, right? I don't think rule of law is dependent on a government or a president. I think rule of law should be separate from that, right? So, yeah, this is what we're hoping, that the Argentinian authorities will look into this. And we are going after all of them, the ones who are dual nationals in their countries. We are preparing other cases where we will be filing very soon. So this is something, one of the missions that we have taken upon ourselves, and we will continue it relentlessly.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Really, it's a pleasure talking to you. I'm grateful really for the hope you have given me in any case of
It was
justice
my
being done.
pleasure, and yeah, and it's something that we're doing all together. We're part of a big thing, hopefully a big shift, and we are all, contributing to that the way we can. Thank you very much, Martin.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye.